Hi, everyone. Thanks so much for joining me for another presentation in our series on fat storing versus burning fat as energy, and just learning how our bodies really work. Today's topic is going to be fasting and metabolic switch. Again, I'm using the book, The Complete Guide to Fasting by Dr. Jason Fung. He is just such a guru in this field. He's a nephrologist out of Toronto, and he was seeing clients, his patients, with renal failure and needing dialysis. And a lot of people who were coming to him, most people with kidney disease, a lot of them have type 2 diabetes. And he decided that instead of dealing with the end stage disease, maybe he could fix the why and treat and cure the type 2 diabetes so people didn't have kidney problems. Well, anybody who's been following me for a while knows I'm holistic, and I absolutely am a why girl. I want to fix the root cause. I want to find the root cause. I don't want to band-aid the symptoms and just band-aid you. And I've always been like that. In my whole 25 years in medicine, working in healthcare, I've always been the person that I want to know the why. And I really lean on this book to share snippets of it with you, because he does such a beautiful job of explaining how our bodies work. And it's in terms that are easy for everyone to understand. I will share his book picture again at the end. I highly encourage you to get this book because it has a wealth of knowledge that will teach you about your body, and it's written in a way that's easy to follow, even if you're not medical. It's written for lay people. Okay, and just for those who don't know, my name is Linnea Baker. I am a board-certified family nurse practitioner. So first, we want to know how to break the insulin resistance cycle. And we've been talking about this over several weeks. We do know from our talks that all foods raise insulin levels. And we talked and said that insulin is equal to fat storage. When you think of insulin, think of fat storage. When insulin is up, our body is storing the glucose as in the fat for later use, for long-term energy use at a later time, okay? And we now know, after talking last week, that when we're in insulin resistance, not only does our body increase hunger, but it also slows down our metabolism. And when the insulin is up, as it is in insulin resistance, we block the ability to access our fat stores for energy. So we're hungry, our metabolism's slowing down, our insulin is staying high, and we're not able to access the fat stores for energy. Remember, we have an unlimited supply of an ability really to store the glucose in our fat stores. There's no cap on that. We said glycogen, there's a cap on how much glucose we can store, but in the liver, but in as glycogen. But after that, when we go to fat storage, it's unlimited. So we talked about fat storage being equal to the freezer. And it's basically when we're in insulin resistance, we're able to constantly store that glucose in the fat stores in the freezer. So it's like putting food in the freezer. There's an unlimited amount of space. But when we're in insulin resistance, we can't get that food out of the freezer and access it. So we're constantly putting the food in the freezer and we can't get it out, and it's overflowing. And that's our fat stores, guys. And that's where obesity and diabetes happen because of insulin resistance, okay? And we need to know how to break this cycle. How do we get out of insulin resistance so we don't develop type 2 diabetes? Well, the answer is fasting. Okay, so a lot of you are going to say, well, what about a low carb diet, Linnea, or a keto diet? Well, we do know that low carb diets can reduce insulin, but we also know that all food raises insulin to some degree. Okay. And so even if you're in a keto diet and you're eating more protein, we know that protein, especially protein from animal sources, raises insulin. So when you're in a keto type diet, you're eating a lot of animal protein usually, right? To compensate for not eating the carbs. And when we do this, we're still raising our insulin. And we now know through his research, and he has a huge clinic in Toronto that he runs with lots and lots of patients he's taken care of, doing a fasting type protocol. And we know that fasting's more effective because we're restricting all food, not just certain types of food, because we know it doesn't matter what food we're eating, everything we eat is going to bump the insulin a little bit. Okay. So instead of having to figure all that out, I mean, really, fats won't, but we don't eat fats by itself. It's usually with a protein or something else. So we know we're going to bump our insulin. So how do we avoid bumping our insulin when we're in insulin resistance or we're trying to get out of insulin resistance? We fast. We know that, and I will tell you, I used to be totally against this. So the fact that I believe in this, I'm utilizing this. I talk to my clients that I work with about this. I follow an intermittent fasting protocol, and I've had great success with it. But it's easy, it's simple, and it tricks our body out of insulin resistance. And I was a person that used to wake up starving in the morning and eat first thing in the morning before I worked out. And I was a person who craved food and ate and grazed at night, okay, in the evenings. And that was when I was the hungriest. And I never in a million years thought, one, I would be able to do an intermittent fasting protocol. I didn't think my body would handle that. And two, I always thought that it would quote unquote slow our metabolism down because I'm not eating. And I always was under that old belief that you should eat small, frequent meals to keep your metabolism steady and you don't skip meals. Well, actually, that's not how our bodies are designed. And for me to change and do a 180 and tell you I absolutely believe in this, I've seen the research, I've done the reading, I've practiced it myself, I've implemented it in clients I work with directly. It's phenomenal, it's powerful, and it works better than anything I've seen. And so for me to go from being a non-believer to a complete believer says a lot, okay? So we know, as I said before, that there's a lot of people, and you guys may know this, there are people that will lower their carb intake and restrict their carbs, and they're still having trouble getting out of insulin resistance. They're still having trouble losing weight and getting their sugars under control, okay? These are the non-responders. And a lot of people over years and years, I mean, we're talking 10, 15, 20 years of our bodies being high insulin levels to the point where we get into insulin resistance and then it leads to type 2 diabetes. Our bodies are not responding to just reducing carbs, okay? And we know that, as I said before, insulin is the main driver for obesity and diabetes. And when we talk about a very low carb diet, we're talking about eating carbs that are less than 3% of your total calorie intake for the day. So we know that if you do that and eat less than 3% of total calories in carbohydrates out of all your macronutrients, protein, fats, carbs in a day, that we can reduce the insulin by 50%, right? And then there's going to be some that are more resistant and non-responders. But with fasting, we can reduce it 100% because if we're not eating anything, our insulin's going to go down, guys. And that's what's so crazy powerful about this. And that's why I can get behind this. So let's talk about the metabolic switch, okay? Because a lot of people will argue, there's people out there that argue, well, fasting only works because you're reducing calories. Well, it's not actually true. The reason fasting works is because it actually creates what's called a metabolic switch. And it's doing so much more than just reducing calories, okay? When you reduce calorie intake, you're not going to get the hormonal benefits that you get from fasting. All right. And we talked about this. Our first week in this series, we talked about debunking the calories in, calories out method, right? And we talked about how our bodies work in a one compartment, two compartment syndrome and how, or compartment, how our bodies are organized in a one compartment or two compartment, theory model, and how two compartments is how our bodies actually work because we store energy in the liver and in the fat. So it's glycogen and in fat stores. Whereas the one compartment syndrome or one compartment model, says that we eat food and if we exercise or exert more energy than we take in calories, we're going to lose weight. And we talked about how that's not the case. And that's why it's got a 99.2% failure rate. Well, when we're fasting, we're actually creating a metabolic switch. And we talked about homeostasis. And we talked about last week when our body's in homeostasis, it wants everything in our body, our organs to all be in balance. And because our body's always trying to get into homeostasis, our metabolism will actually slow down as our insulin stays high. Okay. So we are trying to conserve energy because remember, when your insulin is up, you're not able to access your long-term fat stores for energy. So when your insulin is staying up, it's blocking us from getting to the fat stores for energy. So what does your body do? Because it can't access that fat store for energy, it makes you hungry. So you replenish your glycogen stores, your intermediate stores with glucose, and it also slows your metabolism down, which is how our bodies are adapting to survive. Okay. And the cool thing is, guys, and what blows my mind and what I'm seeing when I do this for myself, for other clients, from listening to other doctors and other specialists in this field talk, our bodies, when we're fasting, it actually puts our metabolism, our metabolism actually stabilizes or goes up, it increases. So when we're eating the small frequent meals and we're in insulin resistance and our insulin is high, our metabolism is slowing down. But when we're fasting in a fasting state, our metabolism will stabilize or even go up to maintain normal energy levels. Also, our adrenaline and our human growth hormone called HGH go up to maintain energy and muscle mass. And also our blood sugar and insulin levels go down, which is what we want. That's the goal, right? As our body goes from burning sugar to burning fat, our insulin levels and blood sugar levels go down, and we tap into those long-term fat stores and we use that for energy. All right. Our bodies are doing all of these things in the fasting state. Why? Because this is our survival mechanisms. When we go into long-term fat burning energy, we're burning our fat stores as energy. This is our survival mechanism from prehistoric times, okay? Because we needed our energy, our focus, our muscle mass, and our metabolism to help us kick into gear and be able to hunt and gather for food. We would have become extinct and we would not have been capable of surviving if our body did not have these mechanisms for survival, because we didn't have access to food in prehistoric times and hundreds of years ago like we do now. Okay. And so our body was designed to kick into gear and allow us to use those fat stores while helping us find food and forage and hunt and gather. Okay. But when our insulin is up and it's blocking our fat stores, our bodies are also saying, okay, we need to conserve energy. So that's when our metabolism goes down. So do you see the difference now between fasting versus restricting calories and how your body wants to stay in homeostasis? And your body has these survival mechanisms in place so that it can tap into our fat stores, which is our long-term energy when we're fasting, which doesn't happen when we're in insulin resistance and we're just trying to restrict calories. And when we put this all together, we're treating the long-term problem and the why behind insulin resistance. We're actually treating it, okay? So in summary, when people are dieting and restricting and doing a calorie in, calorie out method or a low carb diet, they fail to reduce insulin resistance. And eventually it even fails to keep their weight off. They plateau or they're gaining weight. Why? Because their metabolism is slowing down and adapting to get their body back to the weight it was, because the body's trying to go into to get back to homeostasis. Okay. But with fasting, we have prolonged periods of low insulin levels. And when we do that to our body, we're tricking our body and it's breaking the cycle of high insulin and insulin resistance when we do that. And so remember, homeostasis, like I said, it always wants our body to remain in balance. And when we're thinking of the calorie in, calorie out method and low carb diets, we're absolutely ignoring this whole phenomenon of homeostasis. And that's why, if we're not taking that into account, that's why things fail. That's why these diets and these restrictions fail. The body's able to adapt to a consistently low calorie diet. The body adapts by slowing down the metabolism and making you hungry. Okay. We know that our weight will plateau or will regain the weight. So how do we prevent the body from adapting to a new weight loss strategy? And how do we maintain the weight loss? We need an intermittent strategy, not a constant one. We need something that's intermittent, not constant, like calories in, calories out and low carb diet. Intermittent would be fasting. Restricting some foods all of the time differs from restricting all foods some of the time. I'll say that again. Restricting some foods all of the time differs from restricting all foods some of the time, because we're tricking our body in the fasting state by not eating anything, and our body kicks into gear and lets us access the fat stores for energy, which are actually more efficient for us to run on and help us with creativity and focus and energy. So many good things with our metabolism and with the hormones, with this metabolic switch that happens when we're in a fasting state. Okay. So what are we going to talk about next? We're going to cover hunger, because I want you to understand more about how your body works and what hunger is. This also blew me away. And we just want to continue to build on how our bodies work for storing fat as energy versus using fat stores as energy. And remember, the overall picture is to get you to understand why the calories in, calories out method does not work. Your weight plateaus or you gain weight, and it has a 99.2% failure rate. Okay. Although this is the thing that is the standard of care that most providers and most people in the United States recommend, and it does not work. And it's not because of your failure to follow the plan or something wrong with you personally. It's because we're giving you the wrong tools. And I have done the research and have the tools that can help you and actually work for you. If you didn't watch those videos that I talked about before, we're building on these every week. So you can watch these videos either on my YouTube channel, or you can see them on my Health and Wellness Facebook group. So we are talking about debunking calories in, calories out the first week. Then we talked about the fridge and the freezer. Then we followed that with fat storing versus fat burning. What's the secret? And then last week it was metabolism and hunger. So if you haven't seen those yet, please go back and watch them. It's also good to refresh your memory because there is a lot of information packed in these videos. Remember, guys, I am on a mission to impact your health and wellness, to positively impact your health and wellness through education and coaching, to create generational health and a health span that equals your lifespan. I'm super passionate about this. I've worked from cradle to grave, they say. I've worked in all aspects of healthcare. I've worked with end-stage cardiometabolic patients who were very sick, and I also have worked with newborns. I've worked with families and children, and I'm passionate about helping you have a health span that equals your lifespan and create healthy habits, not only for yourself, but for your whole family, to improve your overall health, your family's quality of life, and your quality of life. So if you're frustrated with your current health, if you want help creating a personalized plan and a healthier lifestyle for you to meet your personal health goals, please reach out to me, private message me, comment below, because I truly am here to help and guide you. And I truly take it as a privilege and an honor to get to work with each of you. Now, remember, as far as the information I'm sharing with you today, this information is educational only. If you are following with a provider, a healthcare provider or a physician or any kind of specialist because you have some kind of health medical condition, a chronic illness, any kind of medical diagnosis, or you're taking medication, if you're pregnant, if you're breastfeeding, you need to reach out to your personal healthcare provider and have that discussion with them because they know you best. So this information is just to give you tools and education so that you can have that discussion with your personal healthcare provider. Okay. This is not for children. This is not for children under 18 years old. And also, if you are malnourished, this is not a recommendation for anyone that's malnourished, obviously, okay? But if you have questions or concerns and you want to reach out to me, please do that, and I would love to have a conversation with you. And if you are following with a personal healthcare provider and have questions, I'd be happy to give you information to help you talk with your healthcare provider and get some answers to your questions, okay? And remember, the book that I'm using is The Complete Guide to Fasting by Dr. Jason Fung, and then with Jimmy Moore. I highly recommend you get this. I bought mine on Amazon and it was worth it. I read it in less than a week. It's packed full of great information, more than what I'm covering. I'm just hitting the highlights. And this can be a great tool to help you have a discussion with your personal healthcare provider and help you get on a personal health journey to meet your needs. And again, I'm happy to talk with you. So reach out to me because I am so grateful for you for taking time to listen and show up and support these videos and the education I'm trying to provide everyone. So thank you again, and I will be talking with you real soon with another important topic.